Okay, color me surprised. One of my teaching aphorisms is repeating a mistake 3 times is a mistake. And I had already pointed out that in this recording process, I had noted that I'm using SD cards in the camera and that they run out of space like any recording medium does. And that one of the things I had to do was check the space available because I had previously run out and also left the camera on once. So this time I was staring at the camera, talking to you, and the red light indicating recording went off, which surprised me because I had checked the reading and I thought there was 1 hour and 53 minutes left to go. Probably there wasn't because the SD card was full. So I apologize to you and to me and to Prokofiev for having run out of space. So I will try my best to recapture where I was in the middle of the first movement, roughly measure 157 or so. Oh yes, I will repeat this, and if it's a repetition, forgive me, and if it's something that I didn't manage to record before, then you needn't forgive me because I wanted to say it anyway. Then in 158, accompanimentally against the F of the theme. And then I have this chord here that's played 5-4-2. Previously it was played 4-2-1, and I had never noticed that when the melodic line goes down here, that the chord that's played on the bottom part of my hand is exactly the same chord, same keys as the 5-4-2 chord that I play later on. So it's funny how a lack of awareness, maybe it might not have made any difference whatsoever. There's that chord, but you can hear it, you can see it. I didn't. It's just one of those delicious discoveries. You sort of whack your head and say, Eureka, why didn't I see that before? Whoops. Okay, one thing I do need to know is what's the next note down there? Okay, so I'm going to draw a little, holy mackerel, let me see if, okay, another little detail I did not notice that I believe it's Prokofiev. Could have been the editor, but I believe it's Prokofiev who wrote one of those straight lines when a melody note moves between the hands, and he moved it between this upper D of the left hand, that anacrusic gesture. In other words, he was already pointing me to a way of finding that line. It's another thing I wasn't aware of. Now that I'm aware of it, finding where I place my right hand is so much easier. Testing out the fingering that I've written. The 5-2, 4-1, 1-2 that I'm playing in the left hand here in 158, 59. I kind of like it. I reinforced just playing with the music. I already have internalized it to a certain extent, so I'm sort of relying on being more comfortable, sort of relying on having made larger gestures obvious to myself, but at the same time I was a little fearful of doing it entirely without the music. And what I discovered is, because I have a physically more convincing relationship to what I learned, that there's more fluency to it, regardless. So some of the time I make the mistake of trying to play something without any reference to the score too early, and then I make approximations. So I know this about myself, and it's useful to be able to find that place where I can count on the playing to be accurate and comfortable, and still make reference to the score as I need to. So. I kind of like this. Thickening of the texture when the left hand plays 2 notes at a time continuously is unexpected. I didn't expect it. Now I expected it. To double those notes up. Not to play the same note twice, but to make sure I was playing chords. It's interesting, the right hand has to, in finding its D flat, has to move from thumb to thumb over a major third. To get used to that, and also not to hanging on to the F, which is not a held note. So. That's kind of cool. The left hand was not clear because I didn't think about it. I'm just repeating mindlessly. I've got to be mindful. There we go. I need that F. G. If I call it an F, I don't need it. And the major third in between. Interesting, you know, how easily I can forget until it's fully assimilated. Remember, okay, clarity about the sequential nature of this line. I've got to remember that E flat. The E flat here. Whoops. But I've also got to remember the G that goes with it. That's what happens when you put 2 sections of something together, having not practiced the transition well. You don't really know how that feels. So the displacement of the beat here is very interesting. You have 1 and 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a bit of shock to my system. particularly useful in finding these black notes. And I already remarked on the different technical approach, physical approach to get the D. But I don't really want that second finger there because I'm going to use the second finger right after that. So I'm going to play a double thumb. Because I just started doing that, my body said, do that, and my mind has just bought into it and said, bloody good idea. So. Getting there, huh? Thumb. Thumb coming up. Thumb. Chord. Pretty close. You can almost hear me thinking out loud. No. Did I play the thumb? I can't remember. Thumb, yes, nice. Chord. I know I missed. I'm a little too aware of you, so I shouldn't be so apologetic, because if I miss something and I know that I missed it and why I missed it, then it's no big deal. If I ignore it, then it's a big deal. That's a... Okay, I'm going to go on. That's coming along. Well, this time, instead of the B diminished chord that's present, omnipresent as there's an an A minor chord. So it happens to start as a full A minor chord. It actually, in the previous phrase, does too. The only difference is it's voiced in such a fashion that I don't experience it as a 4-note chord. With 3 notes in one hand and 1 note in the other. But here, it starts off. The anacrusis chord is already a full 4-note chord in one hand, so my awareness of it is significantly different. It's a slightly odd thing what Prokofiev has written, but so it has to become physically predictable. It has to be something recognizable. It's a slightly odd gesture where I'm going to tie well, I'm playing it wrong, actually. I should go from thumb to second on E. So thumb on D sharp to E. Then my arm moves my hand out. And I hang on to, I slide along the E. That's what makes it slightly odd, because I'm making a very specific position shift in a note, in a key that I'm already depressing. Still not playing it right. The second beat is when the chord comes in, and the fourth beat. So. I keep wanting to play the chord early. So stay further in the keys longer because it's just too darn uncomfortable to play the chord there. Or to make sort of a more melodic connection between the thumb note and the second finger. There it is. Okay, let's see what the left hand is up to. I remember it's sort of horn 50 at times. 6, 6, 6, 5, 3. Very much horn 50. Extent my right hand's thumb line can guide my left hand's jumping around. Pretty good. Okay, so the jumping around, as you can see, I'm not looking at my hand. Obviously, I don't need to. There's plenty of time to set up each chord. The quarter note, and a large portion of the quarter note is devoted to actually moving to the next quarter note. This is non-legato. Suspected when the right hand is doing its busy work is where the coordination is so far more important for me to think about. Sure what I looked at, but whatever I did, it simplified the thinking because I wasn't busy having my vision jump back and forth to right and left. I was looking for a simpler line. This time I'm going to be conscious. I'm going to look just at my right hand part and see what happens. It's a little hard to do because the left hand intrudes into my vision. So. That's not what I did. Let me look at the upper part of the left hand this time. That was an interesting experiment, I must say. I felt much more secure somehow looking at where the left hand was going because it's the one that jumps around where the placement of the hand becomes important. The right hand is just playing chromatically, so I can talk to you and play. That's more obviously and more naturally automatic, playable by feel, by tactile input, rather than by looking at where you're going. As I've said, when I stare at the music, it's not that I need to stare at where I'm actually going on the keyboard. Right now it's just an awareness of what are those notes I need to play, differentiating between the notes on the page and the keys on the piano. So. Confidence level is way up just because I'm looking at the right place. This is something really important to stress, that very often the overwhelmingly distracting nature of the score does us in when we're not able to connect with the salient features of the score that help to guide you and make you feel more at ease. As you see, I just played it way over tempo just to show that it's not a big deal. And then what I'm looking for is that degree of fluency. That means it's something I'll go back to, but I'm going to go on now. So need my 5-4-3 because it makes this thumb line a lot easier. So I've just finished. Whoops. I remember telling myself about these white notes. But anyway, just two of these. Let's see what the left hand is up to in the meantime. Okay, there's a repetition. I haven't marked it, probably because it's obvious to me, but I'm going to mark it that I'm using 1, 2 to 3, 5. That seems quite obvious to me. That's best. And again, the fluency immediately makes itself known, so it makes me feel good. Can't see what I'm doing. I must admit, if I really wanted to reinforce what I've done before, I would view everything I had videoed and see exactly what I had decided and go back to that thinking. I think that would be a very efficient thing, but for the huge amounts of time it would take to do that. But who knows? This is an experiment in learning. So I do remember, because I'm reinforcing rather quickly after I last came through this section, that the right hand note is the note that my left hand just left, and that's something I'm going to indicate to myself. Did I say that right? Yes. The right hand doesn't have trouble finding that note, actually, because it's just an octave down from where it was. That's actually where sorry. F sharp, C sharp. B flat on the bottom. It's taking an awful lot of thinking to get those right. Ultimately, I'll just be able to swing back and forth. That's easy. That's easy too, actually. It's just that the shapes of things, the black versus white notes, the sonorities, don't go well together. So they each distract me from the other. I have to decide, again, where my attention should go that will optimize what I'm doing. Experimented with that time was not being spooked by my left hand low note. So what I did was kept my vision on my right hand, keep my vision on my right hand. So thinking the down note of the right hand, E flat. Meanwhile, I'm reminding myself of the shape of this pattern, the three black notes. So I'm grabbing a sensation. And that seemed to work. So that's exactly right. Close. Okay, exactly right. There's a little notch in which somehow your body and your mind together recognize that the learning you're feeding yourself has a place, that it's accepted, that there's a groove that works. And you know that even if you can't do it every time because it's still too new, you know that you found the groove, the trick, the attitude, whatever, that will work. There's a sort of a recognition of, aha, that's the kernel idea of what you're trying to work on right there. Right? That's what we all do in practicing. Then, of course, you want to reinforce it. But when you know that what you did works, has an inherent sense of support for your well-being and the musical well-being of the piece you're playing, that's a very good thing. So let me do that again. Yeah, and it just feels... I grabbed a cluster of who knows what up there, but I don't know if you're aware, I'm not even looking at the up octaves. I'm just looking at my second finger notes in the right hand. Because the more you shift your attention back and forth, the more it jostles your body and makes you lack a centered sense of stability and of peacefulness. Now, of course, I can shift my attention here. Do I need to? Not necessarily. It's just a little safer to do that. As to the rest, just concentrating on my right hand second finger line makes a huge difference. No, wrong notes in the left. I should point out that this happens when you have an aha moment. The expectation is it'll instantly click into place all the time. But the other forces at work, the other voices in your head tell you, you can't trust that. They're always there that you have to deal with. So you get rid of those oppositional, contrary voices by reinforcing as many different ways as you need to and reminding yourself that what you found, in fact, is gold. So... exactly the same pattern as the preceding one, right? When I was on E minor. So this is A minor, C sharp. The relationship of major third. Etc., etc., etc. Now, rather than going on the way the first statement did, it goes on differently. So we live with that. I mean, that's part of what makes it interesting. The left hand, I have to go back to my mindset of before. I think, as before, I will have to concentrate far more on the left hand than on the right hand. Okay, that I played basically passage here, the C sharp minor one, looking at the left hand part. Okay, QED. I have some fancy fingerings like 1/4 that I've used for this perfect fifth in measure 71, 2, 3, 4, which I may not use because I've been using fifth finger at the bottom each time, and even though 1/4 is more comfortable, I think the extra distance and the rather dramatic shifting of my physical strategy is not worth it. And I will probably at some point review longitudinally the recording of this passage I made just before. Maybe I will have explained why I used 1/4. I'm pretty sure it's because of comfort. But in this case, as is often the case, that there are different forces vying for your attention when it comes to fingering, certainly. That in this case, the more consistent fingering is more significant for my retention and my execution than the comfort fingering for that one chord. So, right hands together. Whoops. Okay, it wasn't 100% accurate, but it was right. I mean, it was right in its essence. Is a little bit of more awareness of these shifting chords, how they change from 6, even though this one is written as a augmented fifth, 6, small 6, big 6, small 6, fifth, third, fifth, small 6th. Oh, and that was interesting, so I grabbed this chord with 1 and 3. Rather than with 3 and 5. Just because. And my arm just reached out and tossed my hand there. And even though I had to move significantly more, the gesture itself is so comfortable as compared with finding 5-3 black-white. Black-white, if I give myself enough time, I sort of go play, place, and play. When I played 1 and 3, I just flung. If I were really in that mode, this is very interesting to me. Because if I'm in fling mode, now the thing about fling mode is I have to know where I'm going. It's much freer, the gesture is much freer for the arm and for the hand, because I'm just going back and forth, happy as a clam. The problem is, because I'm so much freer, I really have to aim more. When I'm doing this, it's a little more ginger, I'd say. In other words, I'm being very careful with my placements. I'm going place, 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 place. When I'm in fling mode, if I do any of these quickly, knowing where I'm going, I can do them actually more quickly than I can playing always fifth finger on the bottom. Why? Because my hand is more comfortable, it's more at ease, it's not resisting my arm's gesture, as you can see. Let me show you. Even 1 and 2 work there. Almost. close to that tempo or that ease, playing with the fifth finger on the bottom, because the changing patterns under here just don't feel right for it. So having written down 2 and 5, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to rewrite 1 and 4, and I'm going to put 2 and 5 in parentheses, and I'm going to write 1 and 3. I never made a decision here on E flat G. I just assumed I would play 5 and 3 instead of 3 and 1. But I'm really... It's the sort of decision I make often. I keep being surprised when weird-looking fingerings, because they're comfortable but are not linear based on where I was or where I'm going. I'm surprised when they work so well. So maybe there's a lesson to be learned in that. I should trust my built-up experience and history and let the intuition, partly provided by my body, win out more often. Not even that I need a lot of visual orientation. I just need to be able to trust that what I'm doing is comfortable and reasonable. And that time I was looking at the music and the bopping around, even with the comfort fingerings that don't give good placement. Those worked very well. So okay, see? And then from octaves to seventh. And I do recall it's the left hand that's the most problematical here. So, because it's less consistent than the right hand. Let's see. Tilt of the hand for the seventh is useful to remember. Helps me to get the right notes by virtue of going for the right sensation. The tilt kind of guarantees that I will look for that seventh, for the black note thumb. I think by telling myself to go to second finger here, well, actually just telling myself to go to second finger doesn't make a whole lot of sense. When I have a scale here, the second finger is just there. What I really need to do is to tell myself to come out to the white note. The third one is the most truncated. I have 4 notes, and then 3 notes, and then 2 notes, each time interrupted by the chord. So, interrupt, 3 notes, 2 notes, and now I have back to 4 notes, but the sort of B minor 4 notes. So, 4 notes, 3 notes. That's right. So it has its moments. I'm not 100% secure in placement or in what my left hand is doing. When it goes, that's when it goes into the, what I'll call the B minor scale. Now, the other thing I want to note, because these chords in the right hand are now linear, they're broken, I can actually feel the placement. In other words, I can almost do this, which gives me a connection that I don't have when I'm playing them in isolation. And I think I need to be able to rely on those linear connections. Yes. Boy, did that help me, because I never lost my place. I go, and I remember there's a residual sense, even when I've stopped playing the key, of where I am, which tells me where I'm going. Great. Exactly. No, you have no idea. No, yes, you do. That's the groove I'm talking about, that when you make that kind of a physical connection or mental connection or combination thereof, of course, what gains the most is your emotional state of being. You start to say, I am connected to this. This makes sense to me. It makes sense musically. It makes sense physically. You're in a good spot, in a sweet spot. So, we will just briefly carry on until the next section. And so, and sweet, and last. This is actually subito forte, this ominous ostinato comes in there. But we're going to take a break. I'm going to take a break anyway. You don't have to take a break, whatever you're doing. I like it. It's the sticking. It's not fully sticking. I haven't been able to, or I haven't tried to go all the way through the section. It's certainly not fully memorized. It's getting there in places. But again, just as happened when I was first learning the notes and first finding decent fingerings, is I'm finding something that will be bringing me to the next level. In other words, I'm finding connections between the notes, physically, mentally. I'm making myself feel more secure. So there's a sense that I can savor some of the end product even before I can play the piece. And that's really what I'm heading for. I want my practice to offer me many of these kinds of rewards, and I hope your practice offers you many of the same kinds of rewards. See you soon.